Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. As far as I'm concerned, we're just playing the waiting game. And as far as most analysts are concerned, the bottom is in. And in fact, I want to show you one very interesting chart. And if this doesn't seal the deal here, then I don't know what's going on. Because it could not be more obvious that the crypto space is just following stocks. But the degree to which is kind of astonishing. I'm going to show you in the first part of this video a chart that was shared by one of the top crypto analysts that I follow, top in my mind certainly. But it shows I believe it's the S&P 500 and also the price of Bitcoin. And if not labeled, if I showed you both of these charts, and one's an overlay, but if I showed you both charts with no labels, you wouldn't know which is which. You know, that's what I'm telling you. So that's why, like, if everybody's freaking out right now, just like, what? So now that the stock market's recovering, it's going to keep recovering, and then crypto's not. It's not going to experience any of this stuff, or like what? Or does the stock market just crash to zero too? Everything goes to zero, and then we just don't have a country anymore. Is that what's happening? It's complete silliness here, but it's interesting stuff. I also have some comments from Raoul Pal, former Goldman Sachs executive, who, by the way, is pro XRP. He holds XRP himself, and he does think it's going to be blazing past $10 at some point. He has made that bet. He's been very public about it. Well, he's now saying, in terms of probability, he says that there's about a 70% probability, in his opinion, that the bottom for crypto markets is in, and that we've actually already started an upside cycle at this juncture in time. So anyway, plenty of stuff to talk about here. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. So crypto's a hair in the red at the moment I'm recording this. It doesn't matter. Mostly sideways trading in the last 24 hours. XRP at 37 cents. Bitcoin a hair below 24K. Market cap for the asset class 1.16 trillion, and Bitcoin dominance at 39.27%. And that's primarily as a result of a number of coins popping off. In fact, a lot of the analysts that I follow are noting how even certain meme coins were starting to pop off. Remember when that was happening at the beginning of the last... Well, actually, really, I guess a lot of that was happening towards the later part of 2020. Even remember when that happened, and even Doge really started taking off in there. Well, anyway, there's some of that, some signs of that happening currently, and alts in general. I mean, fair to say, been outpacing Bitcoin recently, even though Bitcoin has been appreciating in price as well. But it's resulted in a reduction in fear in the space. Here's a crypto fear and greed index at 44 out of 100, and you just wait. At some point, that's going to be up into like the 80s, maybe the 90s. We'll be back in extreme greed. I don't pretend to know when, but I firmly believe that it's coming. Now, take a look at this. This is chart analyst Income Sharks, who shared the following with his 328,000 followers. Earlier this morning, he wrote, crypto making up some ground and looking to make moves similar to what the stock market did, was lagging behind. And that itself was a retweet from something he put out a couple days ago with this chart. So you can see that the top line here, that's in red and green, showing positive and negative candles, that's the S&P 500 index. That's what that is. Nothing to do with crypto. That's the S&P 500. We're talking about stocks here, my friends. And this yellow line right here is the price action for Bitcoin. Now, if I didn't tell you what these were, I just showed you these two, this line at the top and this line at the bottom, and I didn't tell you what they were, you might think, huh, these things look pretty much the goddamn same, right? They really do. Not 100%, obviously, but strikingly similar. And this is why I've been saying, like, it couldn't be more crystal clear. And this is just some data. Like, mind you, this is just showing this correlation dating back to the very end of last year. That's what it's showing right here. And it's just so fascinating because it doesn't line up down to the second, the minute, the day, the week, not necessarily. And I've said that many times before. So if you've been following me, I'm sure you've heard me say that a number of times before. But this is one of those moments where, unless you think this is the moment where we're actually decoupling and crypto actually does its own thing, what do you think is next? Because I'll tell you this, the S&P 500 has been on a tear recently. And yes, it's nice to see Bitcoin and crypto's gone up a bit too, but not quite to the same degree. And so this is partly what he's pointing out right here. So if Bitcoin is to follow suit here, bam, like, and here, take a look at this. So this is the S&P 500. This is just the last 6 months. And you can see the S&P It bottomed on what, June 15th? And look what it's done. So right where I'm circling right here, see, this is the most recent bottom, June 15th. Look what it's done since then. So if history is to continue doing what it's doing and repeat, or just kind of rhyme with itself even more accurately, like, we're just playing the waiting game here, folks. There's nothing to be afraid of, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not afraid of a damn thing here. I think that it's, at some point, Bitcoin, even if it's a slow creep to start, fine. But then you will eventually, as always happens in crypto, you get these blow-off tops eventually, and that's the most fun part of all this, fine. But even before that, you're going to see that the trend is upward, and you're going to see more and more eyeballs on crypto, more people paying more attention, more people jumping back in, and then it just hits this point where there's a frenzy around it again. Of course that's going to come. I think so anyway. It's just interesting to see all this. The correlation is truly astonishing. And then there was this from Bitcoin Sharks, and he shared a chart if you want to take a look here. He wrote, Bitcoin, you can tell people forget what it's like to have an uptrend again. Bear markets created a lot of PTSD and hesitancy, but we continue to make higher highs and higher lows. Talks of $10,000 while we keep pushing up are getting a little absurd. And so he's noting what's been happening. So you can look back even to right here, which had been about a third of the way through July. We started trending upward, and then when it went back down a little bit, people are saying, well, there we go. See, Bitcoin is going to $10,000, but that was a short-lived local bottom, and then it went back up, rallied again, and then it went down a little bit, but then you got a higher low here, but still again when that happened, because people are distraught over Bitcoin going from 70,000 to 17,500. So again, they say at this local bottom here, see, Bitcoin, it's going to $10,000, but then it starts going up even higher, and you have a higher high here as well. And then it goes back down a little bit, and people are saying, well, Bitcoin's going to $10,000. See, this is the human psychology behind all of this. And whether it's right or wrong, like, this is the type of behavior that you'd expect to see from the typical retail speculator. That's why I'm highlighting it. So that's why in terms of probability, like, is there a chance that they could be right and it could do that? Sure, I acknowledge that. In terms of probability, is that what's most likely? I don't think so at all. I do not. I try to say never in crypto, and in a general sense, I'm like, okay, yeah. But come on, guys. In terms of probability, is that really what's most likely here? Crypto is going to do that, and we're going to completely break the correlation here between these two different asset classes. And what S&P 500 keeps cranking up to the upside, and then just we just crash and go to zero. Like, what's the logic there? Like, I don't think it's reasonable to suppose that's going to happen. And that's why it's so sweet. Like, I get it. People get impatient holding crypto for so long, and for us XRP holders, like, we've had it the worst, let's be real. And I really do, like, in so many ways we have. You got the SEC coming after us, so artificially low price suppression. You got all the Bitcoin maxi trolls, everybody's ragging on us, calling XRP the banker's coin, when really the most banker-adopted coin on the planet is Bitcoin, which I find hilarious. But not that I even care about that. Like, I don't care. But still, there's just no shortage of things you can cite here. And XRP historically lags behind in terms of when it pops off anyway, when you do have these blow-offs. So we haven't seen it. But the cool thing is, if history really is going to continue repeating, we're going to have our day in the sun. It's not going to matter. Because at some point, this thing's going to go, the whole asset class, the whole crypto asset class moves in tandem. And there's so little money in XRP that we're going to have such an incredible multiplier effect, I personally believe, when things do start going. I mean, the idea of a near $4 all-time high, while that was exciting in the beginning of January 2018, that ain't nothing. To think it can't go way, way, way higher than that? My gosh, we already saw Bitcoin get up to a 1.2-ish trillion in market cap. Maybe it was a little bit higher, maybe it was 1.3, I can't remember. Well, why can't XRP have that? And then why can't, even if Bitcoin's going to be number one, why can't Bitcoin be a trillion or two above that? And then XRP's one day at 1.2. Even if we're going to maintain that gap between, like, why not? Because XRP has been, in the top 10 cryptos by market cap for a decade. For the entirety of its existence, it's always been in the top 10. So if it's going to continue doing that, and if anything, I think maybe it could climb even higher in rank because it's actually useful. But if it's going to stay up there, well, then those types of prices will have to happen, unless you think the whole asset class ceases to exist. But I think that's absurd. Where do you think it's going? That's what I'm saying here. Then there was also this from Income Shark. He said, Bitcoin, after a pandemic, inflation, supply chain issues, a war, political issues, and all of the above, and he's talking about Bitcoin here, after all of the above, it only dropped to sub $20,000 for a bit, which was a retest of an all-time high. People calling for $10,000 must be expecting plagues, war, or Satoshi dumping Bitcoin. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. And I actually have admitted, like, if there is a wild card incident, then okay, fine. Then I'd start to think, okay, maybe that's going to happen, and stocks will tank too. But outside of a wild card incident or something like that, that doesn't seem to be the most probable outcome. I'm not 100% ruling out technically, fine, but I don't think that's what's likely. And then there was this from my fellow XRP YouTuber, the Blockchain Backer. He shared this on Twitter just yesterday. And here's a chart. This is the Dow Jones. And he wrote, the most hated bounce in recent history for the stock market as the world screamed crash at the bottom and the Dow Jones bounced at the 200-week moving average and February 2020 high. So if you look where I'm circling right here, this is what he's talking about as far as the February 2020 high, and then you can see it cratered. And if you were paying attention to finance at that point in time, you remember that probably. You remember, and then going into March, and you know what happened with Bitcoin getting down to what? $3,800, XRP down to 11 cents, but everything was moving down in tandem. But then it came back up, and up and up and up, and then Dow Jones corrected to the downside. And wouldn't you know it, where it corrected and where we just bounced off of recently, and you can see this rally just taking off here. It's the same as the February 2020 high, and that's what he's citing here. And so in a separate tweet, he then wrote, he shared another chart here. This is also the Dow Jones. He said, one reason it is so hated is that most got trapped on the same side of being bearish at the bottom, and the rally has been so aggressive it has given no re-entry possibility. Essentially going straight line up through all moving averages, poking the 200-day today. And so this is relevant, in my humble opinion, because, as I've been stating, crypto moves in tandem with stocks, just in a general sense here. And so he's acknowledged, the Blockchain Backer, he's saying in part that this has just been so aggressive, the people that were trying to time the markets, and these are my words now, but that's basically the message he's communicating, the people that were timing the markets, darn. That's why, for me, I don't want to expose myself to risk. I don't think I'm a financial wizard. I'm a dude on the internet, all right? So I think the way for me to reduce that type of risk is to do nothing after I purchase the thing, whatever the thing is that I want. So in the case of XRP, I bought it. Now I just hold it. Same for my Bitcoin, my ETH, whatever it is. I'm just sitting on it. I'm holding. I am Mr. Patient. And that way, because the volatility doesn't scare me. Like, this is normal human behavior. I don't care about that. What would really expose me to, like, the type of risk that scares the hell out of me is if I were the type that would start getting in and out of position. If I were forced to get in and out of positions and make moves based on what I think is probable to happen, that would scare me. Because even if you're right X number of times in a row, if you're wrong on one, it can really bite you on the rear side. And then there are additional tax implications in the United States if you're not holding a crypto for at least a year. So to me, there's so many reasons it's just not worth it to try and time that stuff. And it does look like the bottom is in, according to so many, including Raoul Pal. So here's the headline again from the Daily Hodl. Former Goldman Sachs executive makes high conviction call for crypto bottom amid shifting macro backdrop. Macro guru Raoul Pal says he believes with a high degree of certainty that the bottom for the crypto markets is in. In a new interview with asset management firm Arca, the former Goldman Sachs executive says that the macroeconomic environment that has kept the crypto market bearish for most of the year is beginning to shift. And here's a quote from him. For me, the macro is rolling over. By that, I mean we're going into recession. We should see things like ISM, which is Institute for Supply Management Survey, and other things start falling apart pretty quickly. The forward-looking elements are falling apart already. We're seeing it globally. So that's growth evaporating. Alongside that, the narrative hasn't caught up. Most commodities are down between 30% and 50%. Everyone's long and expecting oil to go to $200. I think there's a washout coming, and it goes down to $60. So that's the last inflation story, end quote. So according to Paul, the change in the macro backdrop will trickle down to businesses and then the labor market. And here's another quote from him. People built massive inventories after COVID. These inventories are now unsold because of the economy slowing down and inflation eating disposable income. So we've seen it from Walmart and Amazon. They're going to start discounting inventories to try and shift it. People are laying off staff. So the macro cycle is going to get to the ugly phase, end quote. And I'll just pause to highlight this too. This was from this morning. It was a tweet from Zero Hedge, which reads as follows. Walmart has canceled billions of dollars in orders, chief financial officer says. Billions of dollars in orders, just cancel them. Well, in certain items, I mean, there's a surplus in terms of inventory here. If people shifting what they're buying, right? There's... Well, what do you expect when you have tougher economic times? People change how they're behaving. So, I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, right? Of course, that does mean that inflation should, to some degree, be tamping down over time as well. Because, what is demand? I mean, it's just too many dollars chasing too few goods. So, and then here's another quote from Raoul Pal, because he's highlighting that the bad news on the horizon for the economy is good news for financial markets. And here's his explanation. He says, why is that making Raoul bullish? Because the outcome to that is as inflation comes down and bond yields fall, liquidity conditions improve. And what drives financial markets at the macro level the most is liquidity conditions, end quote. And so as for crypto, Paul says the shift in the macro landscape could trigger a tidal wave of demand from institutional investors. Oh, I don't doubt that one bit. Here's what he has to say about that. The quote is, the other big players in the space now, the hedge funds, the macro funds, and then the institutions, well, they're also a function of liquidity. When liquidity is more available and cheaper for them, they can apply more leverage essentially in their portfolios. And then as far as, crypto, well, the macro guru also says that with liquidity conditions improving, he believes that crypto is gearing up to ignite a fresh market cycle, which is why I just keep saying it's just a waiting game. That's all it is. And the final quote from him, my view is, let's give it a probability, 70% probability. So that's pretty high conviction that the low is in, and therefore we're starting the upside cycle. If I had to bet one way or another, I'd bet in line with what he's saying. I've looked at a lot of perspective from a lot of different people, look at historically what's happened, and to me, that's what seems most probable. So nobody knows exactly when you're going to see the big parabolic shifts in terms of price action, but so what? Let us have you'll just wake up one day. It'll probably be a Wednesday. You'll just wake up and you'll check your portfolio, your crypto portfolio, be like, oh, what in the hell now? It's way up. Those are fun days though. It's like we'll see those days together when they come. We get to experience that together. But it really is just a matter of time. It's been doing this for 13 years, folks. It's not just going to cease to do that. So I couldn't be more excited. For XRP though, it hasn't even existed that long. It's been around for about a decade. I mean, it's been volatile the whole time, just like any crypto. But it's only had one, like if you're talking about where like the craziest of crazy action happened, there's only been one roughly 12-month window that makes your eyes pop. So the fact that we haven't yet seen that again, I don't think that's peculiar. And that time period would be, of course, if you look from roughly January 2017 to January the following year, went from what? And I'm using rough numbers here and rough time frames, but I think that's about right. It went from probably about half a penny up to almost $4. So the fact that we haven't seen one of those again, well, it hasn't even existed that long. It may seem long to you subjectively, but it hasn't been that long. For life-changing wealth, I'm happy to sit on the sidelines and enjoy talking about it and tracking all this stuff. I'm good to go. I'll wrap up here, though. I am not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.